I don't want to scaremonger or anything like that, but I mean, are we moving to an era where owning a home is only for the wealthy? I mean, if we're just going to be worrying about how to feed ourselves and stocking up on food and there seems to be a rise in unemployment. That's not limited to any one country. That's across the globe, and I know it's significant in the UK as well. What kind of world are we moving into?
A dangerous world.
Okay. All right, welcome back, guys. This is Dean Jones here, your host. I'm a Realtor Associate at Coldwell Banker Jamaica Realty and founder of Jamaica Homes. Today, I'm going to be covering a discussion about Jamaica and the global shift and what's next for real estate. So, we're going to keep it real today, and it's all going to be about economics and how the world's big moves affect the little guy. We're going to deep dive into something that's on everybody's minds right now. Global economic shifts, prices are rising, inflation's hitting hard or about to, and the world feels like it's changing overnight. I don't know, I watch the news sometimes and it does worry me sometimes. But what does it mean for a small country like Jamaica? And more importantly, what does it mean if you're looking to buy a home or invest or simply survive in an uncertain economy? Okay, so to help break this down, I've got a good friend of mine on called Sean Aldred. Welcome, Sean.
Welcome, Dean.
It's good to have you here today. Sean's from the UK and has a wealth of knowledge around some, global markets. And today, he doesn't like to be called an expert, so I'm not going to do that. But we're going to be having this round kind of discussion, connecting some dots, and we're just going to let this thing flow. So, yeah, welcome to the podcast, Sean. And how about we just get straight into it?
Let's go.
All right, so it's on the tip of everybody's tongues. There's things happening all around the world. Tariff wars, all sorts of shifts. There's wars. And, it's affecting the global economy or about to. Let's start big. How do you see the global economy shifting right now?
Well, let's start with one of the words that you just used, war. There's two of them, two major ones. But we thought one was disappearing in the Middle East between Israel and Palestine, but that looks to have flared up. We've obviously got one major conflict, Ukraine-Russia, that doesn't seem to be coming to any kind of conclusion. You've got very difficult politics, and that's not just confined to one region. It's not a big country thing. It's working its way all around the world, and not in a good way. We are definitely in strange times, difficult times. We've got neighbours against neighbours, and once upon a time that was fairly well defined. We knew who the enemy was. That's all changing. Okay. Now it's in neighbours, it's within countries. Yeah, they're certainly one of the best examples, and not, I don't say this with a smile, but yeah, America is basically two countries now. And the America that I knew in 2016, okay, so you can have some pretty lively conversation with people, but at least they'll listen. At least there were facts somewhere on the tape and some sort of commonality. There were values. There were things that you could commonly agree on, areas that were, up for discussion. Now it's just a free-for-all. Everything seems to be alternative, and it's which camp you're in. And so you're seeing similar trend lines, political trend lines across Europe. You've had major elections in Germany fairly recently, and you had a far right party that has never quite disappeared since the Hitler days. But they were struggling to get double digit in terms of acceptability. It wasn't so long ago, the last time I checked, they were polling fifth as the fifth largest party, but they were never a player. Well, the recent elections, they came in number two.
That's a lot, Sean. I mean, I don't mean to sound comical, but I know I've mentioned this to you before, but I, I tend to watch the news a lot. I catch up with what's going on a daily basis. Sometimes twice a day I'm on YouTube. And at times I just give it a break. But it seems like every time I go back to the news, it's almost like something else has happened. And I don't mean that in the sense that new things don't happen. This is a big world. Different things happen. There's always things happening. But it just seems like the world is shifting, and every time I turn off the TV and I turn it back on, even if it's a few days later, something else big has happened, or there's a big change that could affect the rest of us, i.e. us here in Jamaica. And we've all heard the term that if America gets a code, or sneezes, so to speak, the world gets a code, right? And so far, when I look around at the economy here, we've not seemed to be affected by anything that has happened over the last few months. But how long is that going to last for?
The world as we know it, the world that I looked at in 2016 and again in 2020, it's now in 2025, particularly with events out of the US and with Russia as aggressive as it is, it's unrecognizable. And a word that comes to mind that I rather hope we would never see, and that is strategic ambiguity. There was a point when you knew who your friends were, and America were friends with Europe. There's trade conflict, there always has. There's tensions, there's sport, there's culture, but there's not the level of tension that we have today. There was a point when you knew if you started a war, you were the aggressor. Now that aggressor is being called a friend.
So we've got wars. We've got the obvious war between Ukraine and Russia, but then we've got these tariff wars. Countries are restricting trade left, right, and centre. It started with the US and Canada and some of their neighbours, including China, should I dare say, and that's been ongoing for a while. But they've just stepped it up with what they've done. Should Jamaicans be stocking up on food and essential goods? Because right now I'm sitting here thinking, hang on a second. If Canada's raising it, if there's tariffs coming from Canada, right? And I'm not an expert on this. And then there's tariffs, the US is introducing all these tariffs, and then Europe are following suit. How long until that affects the food? And we all know that Jamaica imports quite a lot of food. It's not hitting us yet, but I don't know, it just appears to me that, I don't know, everybody just kind of just getting on with their lives and not realizing that this is going to have an impact. It must have an impact. What do you think?
Right, let me start with one word, food. Let me start with the two countries you've mentioned, the third one, Jamaica, and I'll introduce the fourth one, Mexico. I'll start with the current conflict, the trade war between the US and Canada, and you can be absolutely certain that this will have reverberations right across the Americas. So yes, it will affect the Caribbean, and there'll be no country that will be untouched. Following closely the media, some of the commentators would be talking about the disturbance in Canada, and they were talking about that within the first month of the Trump administration. You've had Trump 2.0 now for 60 plus days, but America only levied one tariff, and that was China. They hit China very quick in the second Trump administration, and that was plus 10%. China can absorb it. Canada was untouched. Mexico were untouched. In the last couple of weeks, it's all changed. Mexico got hit with 20%, another 20% became another 40%. No surprises. Who wants to get hit with that? Canada had no choice politically. They've got a new government in place. Canada has now responded. I'll come back to the word food. I think America, there is a strong belief that America is self-sufficient, and in many respects they are. They dominate most key industries. You'd think with all the land mass that they've got, that they would be, near enough self-sufficient when it comes to food. They're not. They're major importers from Mexico. Most of their citrus, or a significant amount of their citrus, and large agricultural crop come from Mexico. And the same with Canada, even though it's a much colder climate, they do a lot of greenhouse stuff.
Yeah.
And they can do green stuff because they've got thermal. They've got a cheap way to get those vegetables growing.
Yeah.
And so this is going to affect the price of tortilla in just about every food item you can imagine. And I know the US, in terms of grains and other areas, they are, or at least they were, major exporters. I don't know where Jamaica, where its main countries are in terms of food. The cans that you referenced, should they have to stockpile. This sneeze, you talked about, if there's a sneeze, it doesn't just stay confined to this one locality. It will creep. And so I'm no expert. I don't pretend to be an expert. I cannot say when it will hit the shores of Jamaica or other countries in the Americas, but it will not be contained to North America. It certainly won't be contained to the immediate southern border to Mexico. This will creep south, and it will go out, and it's already hitting Europe. And so, yeah, this is we're in a time where
It's uncertain times.
turn on the news, it never goes off here. Europe's on a war footing, and that it's not just food. This will have global implications for everything, for interest rates, for growth. China.
For me, it's logical as well. It's logical that if food prices rise, which they're going to, unless I'm missing something, the food prices will be going up, right? So if that goes up, and we're all, scratching our heads thinking, oh, I didn't stock enough food, need to buy more. All of a sudden, everything else is less of a priority. That house I wanted to buy. To hell with the house. I need to feed my kids. To hell with that extension. I need to stock up.
The last thing your audience wants is an alarmist. But are we in stable, slightly troubling times? No, there's nothing stable about where we are, and it's nothing troubling. These are dire times. There was a country that you could look to. It was Mr. Predictable. It's anything but. Politics has changed, and America you could rely on. Europe can't rely on them anymore, and there's almost no industry that will be untouched. Semiconductors, airlines, definitely food, and then all the major macros are going to be affected. Interest rates, it's going to have a knock-on effect on growth. Most of Europe is doing low growth, has been for the last 20 or so years. America is now looks like they're doing stagflation because of the events in the last 30 days or so.
I have to say, in the last pandemic, well, when I say the last pandemic, the COVID-19 pandemic, there was a lot of people who thought Jamaica would have just flatlined, basically. And it didn't. And a lot of people wondered why. And so I had a quick peek, and I don't pretend to know everything about Jamaica. It's multi-layered, it is complex, and it's just as complex as other countries. In essence, it might be even more because it sits right in the middle of, you've got US to one side, and you've got key interests from China and other countries, right? So why did Jamaica sell through, and why didn't it just flatline, and why has it survived? Because it has survived many things. It usually survives unscathed. Last time during the pandemic, building work stopped. Tourism almost grinded to a halt, and the country continued to tick along. And one, I heard, I was reading the book and researching online, and somebody said, well, don't forget about taxes. So the way that works is, although a lot of the money that comes into Jamaica from the tourism industry it comes in foreign currencies. It goes straight back out. It never stays. Most of it just never touches the shore of Jamaica. But taxes remain. Hotels get taxed. The tourism industry right around our tax. So it's those taxes that continue to come in during the pandemic that kept Jamaica going. In addition to that, we have a huge returning residents communities over here and expats that have returned to Jamaica, and they send a lot of remittances to family and friends, and also building work. People building their own homes as well, kept the country going, and that's been great. You can almost say Jamaica's been a blessed country in that respect. But what's happening now? I mean, should we be worried? Should regular Jamaicans be worried? Are we going to get through this one in the same way?
Regular Jamaicans should be concerned. There's no part of the Americas, no part of Africa, no part of Europe that shouldn't be concerned. These are troubling times. Yeah, there's you can't finesse this. This is not a good situation that we find ourselves in. There are cycles in economics. There's 7, there are 8, there are 11 years. There's usually a predictability about them. And there are big institutions. There's World Bank money. There's America, beloved America. Fairly significant part of their annual budget goes from US aid. Guess what happened? One of the first things that happened when Doge, Elon Musk, came in, it all got cut, not trimmed. Let's take 10% off here because we've got a few things on the go. 100%. It all got cut. You've got sizable countries in Europe, like where I am, England, and this has all happened in the last couple of weeks, where, again, fairly significant contributors to foreign aid. It's all been cut. And who would have been the beneficiaries? So obviously it would have been a bunch of deserving countries across Asia Pacific, certainly across Africa, and it would have been a reasonable amount of money. The UK doesn't have much of a presence in South America, but or in the Caribbean, but America does, and you can bet that a good chunk of, whether it was hard currency, whether it was humanitarian aid or agricultural assistance or some other form of money flow, was coming from the US government. It's all gone. And unless the politics changes in America, that's likely to be in place for the full duration of the second term of the Trump administration.
Wow. I don't want to scaremonger or anything like that, but I mean, if we're moving to an era, are we moving to an era where owning a home is only for the wealthy? I mean, if we're just going to be worrying about how to feed ourselves and stocking up on food and there seems to be a rise in unemployment. That's not limited to any one country. That's across the globe. And I know it's significant in the UK as well. What kind of world are we moving into?
A dangerous world, a very unpredictable world. Even in times of pandemics, and we've had 2 really, really big ones in the last 100 years. We had the Spanish flu that took out about a third of the population in 1917. We've never come close. And then we had our big one, the 100-year event in 2020, but we managed to get through it. I mean, it was obviously very, very difficult. It was challenging for the developed countries, but I can't begin to imagine how difficult it is for the developing countries where, significant parts of their income are dependent on tourism. Well, guess what didn't happen during COVID? It was lockdown. There was not a lot of flights, not a lot of ships. And so that would have clearly have had a major impact. But, and in your setup, Jamaica found a way. Other countries in the region found a way to get through it, challenging as it is, because there was a level of stability. There was a pandemic, but there was stability. We don't have that stability now. It's gone. And my fear is it can take decades to build a company or a relationship with people. And the same is true with relationships between countries. In very short time, because of the way politics has changed, particularly out of the US. Alliances, relationships that have been in place, the arrangement between Europe and America, it's been there for 80 years. It's dead. I'm calling it. I don't think it's a variation of dead. I think it's dead. And Europe are realizing that they cannot rely on Russia. They cannot rely on the US. And if Russia escalates, if it goes beyond the borders of Ukraine, then they're alone. And I think they now understand that. And it's taken them 30 plus years to realize that they should have been spending. They were overly reliant on America, and it's entirely appropriate that America is going heavy on Europe. And in the last week, 2 weeks, the German Parliament, they've just had a new administration come in, unprecedented amounts of money. They've changed their constitution, and essentially they're going to be tapping the bond markets, the international bond markets, up to 800 billion US.
That's not small.
We're not talking small amounts of money. Most economies in the world would not be 800 billion. There's not many that are over, that come even close to that. It's a staggering amount of money. That's what America spends on defense every year, 800 billion.
Wow. That's significant.
And this will, and they don't have that money just sitting in the bank, in a German bank.
Right.
They're having to go to international investors. And when that was announced in the last week or so, a couple of weeks, the international bond markets, those that are currently borrowing, and there's almost no country that is self-sufficient. They're having to borrow just to pay the bills every year because they're running deficits. Their interest will have gone up. Most of them are not on fixed. It will be on variable rates. And so there's going to be a shift to resources. Germany in particular is going to be prioritising building up their war effort.
I mean, you mentioned something really interesting there, Sean, and it wasn't one of my questions actually, but there was a mention of inflation, and actually I did have another question in relation to that, but more to the point, what just came into my head was mortgage rates, right? And last year we had some high mortgage rates in Jamaica. Things have settled down since, and the market seems to be stabilizing, seems to be coming down, and we've been looking forward to that because it means that there's going to be more people coming onto the housing market, more first-time buyers, and more movement. So more buyers, more sellers, etc. Which, it's great when the economy is moving like that, and it's great for realtors, for real estate agents like myself. But the big question now is, and it's not I probably don't want to hear the answer, but if all this is happening and all the things we've mentioned, what's the potential impact on this? Because the mortgage products themselves from Jamaica, they're not just Jamaican institutions. We all know that financial products are linked globally usually. It's usually a multitude of different companies involved in any product, including insurance, car insurance and all the rest. So how might this affect mortgage rates and insurance?
There's no part of the global economy that will be untouched. And most countries in the world are not self-sufficient. Their revenues are X, but their costs are much greater. If you've got greater costs, and it doesn't matter whether it's, Ma and Pa trying to sort the budget out somewhere in Kingston, or where I am in Northamptonshire, not far away from where Princess Diana is buried, you are at the mercy of international markets. And markets are fickle, but they're also smart. And smart money is always going to go where there's the least amount of risk and the more return. And if you've got more and more governments massively spending, and I'm now talking about Europe, and it's not just Germany. Here in the UK, we've announced they're going from 2.3 to 2.5% spend on defence. Now, that's only a relatively small amount, but we're a $3.6 trillion economy, so a 0.2% increase in defence is tens of billions, hundreds of billions over the lifespan of a parliament. And so there's only so much money out there that's available. It's going to have a knock-on effect. Interest rates will go up, and it will go up for the homeowner. It will go up for anyone who uses credit cards. It will go up for personal loans. Big business are going to be affected by it. Governments who need to borrow money, suddenly, they might be paying 6%. It's now at 9%. Or they just simply can't get it, because now you've got one country who's about to tap the international markets for an unprecedented amount of money, 800 or up to 800 billion. And it's not just there's this 800 just sitting around waiting for an announcement from a German government, and bang, that money starts to flow. It's going to come from somewhere, out of somewhere to somewhere else. So, yeah, there's it's turbulence. It will hit the commodity markets. It will absolutely hit the oil gas price, because this war is, there seems to be no end. Russia has absolutely no interest in doing peace. They didn't start it to do peace. They started it to do war, and that was to take all of Ukraine. And so you think, well, that's a European thing, and it's that sneeze example you mentioned. As long as you keep that sneeze local, then it will never drift. Well, this is around the world now. There's no country that will be untouched by what is happening in Europe and what we are seeing with the change of politics in the US.
So
China are now getting hit with tariffs. You think China's just going to sit there and do nothing? Absolutely not. Retaliatory. It's already kicking in.
More retaliation, more tariffs.
Oh, absolutely. China can afford to let America strong arm them, and they won't.
So
Europe
just
can afford to let America strong arm them. Nor can Canada, nor can Mexico.
So I just want it to be clear for everybody listening, and we're talking about tariffs, because I don't think everybody particularly knows exactly what that is, So in terms of definition of...
The short answer to tariffs is 3 letters: tax. And who pays the tax? The country that is imposing the tariffs. So this is where a form of economics that I don't understand, that you won't find in any competent textbook, is now being practiced in America. There is a current administration in the US apparently believe that it's the other side. So in this case, it's Canada that will get hit. It will be the Canadians. It will affect them, the Mexicans and the Chinese. Well, that's true, because there's 2 parts to this. But you can be absolutely certain when the price of aluminium goes up, because Canada are big suppliers of aluminium.
Yeah.
Guess where that goes into? Well, just about every food product. Back to your use of the word cans.
Yeah.
Every part of construction, every part of industry, it uses different metals. If aluminium goes up, then heavier metals will also go up. It will have a knock-on effect. So that's going to have a knock-on effect then on oil. Refining capacity is down, because Ukrainians are taking out more and more refining capacity with this war. There's no one will be untouched. There's no economic metric, growth, no inflation that will be untouched. America, the key word to watch out for in America is stagflation.
What is that?
High inflation, low growth. That's the simple. And if you were interviewing someone in Japan, ask them what happened in their 2 or 3 lost decades in the sort of 1990s up until fairly recently. Almost no growth, and often it would be negative, and high inflation. And you don't, countries like Japan, big savers. Well, if you stick your money in the bank, you are getting negative interest rates. Most people, your listeners, will think, how is that possible? How is that even a concept? Well, it is. And you can ask countries like Japan, and we're not talking third world nation here. This is a developed country. The lack of, bankers love stability. Governments love stability because then it's predictable. Then you can do policy. As boring as policy is, you can at least plan. You can be 3 to 4 years out. Okay, things change. The world is what it is. But there's a level of light and a level of understanding. It's all gone. That level of light has disappeared. It's dark. And, I'm desperately hoping that there is peace in Russia. And I'm desperately hoping that the Trump administration is able to bring that together.
So if you had to give one financial survival tip for the next 5 years, what would it be?
Pray. It's not a tip, and it's not financial. It might be the strongest thing that people have.
Wow.
I stay in cash as much as you can. Stay in cash. I would not be reliant on institutions. I certainly wouldn't be reliant on governments. Governments aren't going to be able to tap the same sources if they need immediate funds. You've got countries like, people have probably picked up I have an accent, and that's thinking, is this guy English? Lived in England for almost 30 years, but no, this is an Aussie accent. Australia, where I come from, like Jamaica, we have industry right across the board, but won't surprise people in your country to know that tourism is a nice little earner for Australia. Well, guess what happens during wars? People become concerned. Do they do big investments in houses and cars? Some do, but probably the majority think, maybe it's better to stay in cash. Yeah. Guess what businesses do? If they see growth, smart businesses will put business out there to try to take that growth. Well, where's the growth going to come from? The growth in the defence industry is coming because there's a major war going on. But trust is everything. Confidence is everything. And you're getting into things you can't define. You can put words to it, but you struggle to put numbers to it. I call it, as I see it, the world is a mess.
Yeah, sorry. When you say to stay in cash, what do you mean by that?
It means don't rely on credit. If you have the ability to save, I would save. If you are looking to make if you're a business person, you're looking to buy a piece of plant, get a new factory or an upgrade, a homeowner that maybe is contemplating an extension, or, there's another child on the way, you want an extra bedroom, I would hold off on any big capital purchases. If you have cash, I would stay in cash.
Okay, well,
I would not spend.
I know a lot of people shifting towards cryptocurrencies. Is that bad in this time?
We've got a US president who's backing it. He used to, it wasn't so long ago, about 12 months ago, I recall he would be dumping on it, and now he's set up his own cryptocurrency and has made quite a lot of money. And as recently, I think as last week, was talking about how they're going to be the crypto capital of the world. And then his economic people who are still in the same administration have come out and basically said, we don't see that happening.
I will interject to say that I don't know if you've heard about this, but there was about 2 billion worth of crypto taken from one of the big exchanges. I think within the last month that happened. So I mean that's one of the biggest heists in history, if you like it. I'm not too sure it got as much press as it should have done. But I can't see that being the end of that. there's going to be more of that.
Well, the king of crypto is also the king of Doge, and Doge is the massive 2 trillion in cost savings that Elon Musk said he would find in US finances. And what's happened to Elon personally? In the last week, I think it was Tuesday, he lost 16 billion US in one day, which is probably you and I combined, and maybe your total audience would make it in a year. But to him, 16 billion is nothing. Over the last 2 months, he's lost over 120 billion.
Wow,
Now, he's
that's
not sure
staggering.
pennies, because on the 23rd or 24th of December, so we're only talking 3 months ago, the stock of Tesla was trading at about 462 US a barrel. When I last checked, it was down to about 220. So this is one of the most sophisticated, most intelligent global tech bros whose net worth got to almost close to $500 billion, and that's trillion with a T. I think he peaked at about 450, 460.
Yeah.
He's now struck. And
So, as you say, no one's exempt. Nobody's exempt.
No. I don't feel sorry for the guy. He's doing all right. You can live off 260 billion. Most people could. But he's lost quite a bit of money, and this has all happened because of the administration he's working in. So it's just these crazy, and there's no good answer to it. There's no good economics to it.
So, Sean, if I ask this straightforward question, I think you've more or less already answered it, but would you invest in real estate right now? I mean, if you were, whether you're in England or Jamaica or the US, is that still a good investment in 2025?
Well, I'll give you my personal answer. I won't try to attempt to answer for anyone else. I have a church, an 800-year-old church in Wales, about 3 hours from where I am, that I've been trying to get. Now, I locked in a price 6 years ago, and I'm fortunate that I didn't have to put any money up other than a relatively small deposit. So this has gone up in value. It's conditional on me getting planning permission. So there are situations where the answer is I'm probably going to be okay if I get planning permission on this particular deal. I'm in the process of actually selling some other properties at the moment. And not because of what I'm describing, the events around the world and a certain concern and a need to want to go to cash. It's just I was planning to do this anyway, and it just so happened that we've got some crazy wars and some crazy economics going on at the moment. But to your question, for the average Joe, and if you've got some cash and you are looking to make an investment, if you really feel it's solid and you're not going into debt, and it's it should, as a minimum, be able to hold its value. You're not sort of at the peak of a market and where suddenly bang, like Tesla stock was on an ascendancy, it was going in only one direction, and then suddenly in the last 3 months it's 100% down in value, and that trend line is likely to continue. And Tesla was about as strong a car company as you could get. So if it's hitting major blue chip stocks, you can bet the same. There'll be the same knock-on effect in property, because the stock market and the property market, they are linked. They're different asset classes, but they are linked. I would go back to my same advice. Unless you really feel you're on solid ground, you're not taking on debt, or you're taking on debt that you can service, I would stay in cash. That would be my advice.
Yeah, I mean, I've got some golden nuggets to share. And if food prices go up, everything else in the economy slows down. Real estate is no exception. I don't think that's everywhere in the world, really. And investors don't run markets, fear and confidence do. The third one was the best time to buy real estate was yesterday. The second best time is today, which has always been true for the right type of real estate. As you mentioned, something that hasn't peaked in terms of the value and is still posed to increase in value and go up. Housing is not just about price, it's about access to financing, jobs and inflation. And small countries must think big if they want to survive global shocks. What do you think about that?
It's an impressive list. Yeah. Having rainy day is always a good thing. Not everyone is able to afford it. They live paycheck to paycheck. You've got about 60% of America, which might surprise maybe most of your listeners, that live paycheck to paycheck. They have no more than 400 US in their bank. That's it. Yet they're the wealthiest nation in the world. And they are for the top 10%, the top 20%. They're doing rather well.
Yeah.
But for the vast majority, it's paycheck to paycheck, even in developed countries. Europe, it's not quite as bad in terms of inequality.
Whereas they say, as they say, your mortgage rate today determines your financial stress tomorrow.
Yeah. I mean, you've got countries in the world, say, for instance, like Sri Lanka, just off the coast of, right near India, that half of their income, so the money that the government earn, goes just to servicing debt.
Okay, well, I would like to leave everybody with a final question, and that is, what if the real risk isn't just high home prices, but something much bigger? What if we're asking the wrong questions? We keep worrying about mortgage rates and affordability. What happens if global food crisis forces people to spend their money just to eat? And what happens if a new round of trade wars makes construction materials so expensive that development slows to a crawl? Will you be thinking about buying a home, or will survival come first? Jamaica's seen tough times before, and we've always seemed to come through it. But the smart ones, the ones who make it ahead, are the ones that prepare now. So ask yourself, what are you doing today to make sure you're not just surviving the next big shift, but thriving in it? Sean, this has been an incredible conversation, and I want to thank you for dropping these gems, and to everyone else listening. If you found this valuable, please share it with someone who needs to hear it. The world is changing. The question is, are you ready for it?